response program to deploy public sector and community-based services to victims, families, and communities impacted by outbreaks of violence. Third, an illegal guns initiative would use data, law enforcement coordination, and community partnerships to interrupt the flow of illegal guns to our city. The committee also recommends 2 initiatives around officer safety and professionalism and community policing that recognize that the consent decree offers a starting point for 21st century Chicago policing that values and respects its officers and the citizens they serve as true partners in public safety. Finally, we propose the creation of a Mayor's Office of Reintegration Services to help returning citizens succeed, reduce recidivism, mitigate violence, and build economic mobility. Your administration would manifest a commitment to inclusion of diverse community stakeholders, young people, and our police officers to co-produce public safety. Robust data access and clear metrics for success would ensure transparency and accountability. In sum, the committee believes that the successful implementation of these initiatives would embody the value of equity, where every resident in Chicago lives in a safe and peaceful community.
Let me just say, as I hope you know, public safety to me is the basic right and responsibility of government. We can't have a circumstance in which public safety is only available to the rich and wealthy. I don't want our kids growing up with fear as their constant companion as it is now. So I appreciate the work of this committee. I can assure you that I've been trying hard on this issue and will continue to. I have some comments, but first let me ask a couple questions. LA is a larger city by population, but a substantially smaller city when it comes to their police force. And yet they have violence numbers that we would envy. Chicago, unfortunately, even this year, with some progress, is still probably going to end the year with twice as many homicides as New York and LA combined. What lessons did your committee talk about that we can learn from other jurisdictions about ways to build safer communities?
Thank you, Mayor-elect. It's a great question. So one thing that both Los Angeles and New York do very well is they coordinate city services, including but not limited to law enforcement services, around the goal of reducing gun violence. And one of the ways that they do that is by identifying the small number of residents who are at highest risk of being victimized by gun violence and delivering in a coordinated way resources to try to prevent and intervene with those at highest risk so that they won't go on to be victimized by gun violence. The city of Chicago really hasn't done that. There are efforts underway from community-based partners that have had some success in bringing down our level of violence, but a commitment by the mayor's office to coordinate city services with community-based partners really would take a lesson from New York and Los Angeles, and we think would be transformative.
Just a quick comment. I think another difference between our city and that of New York and LA is a couple things. One, in LA, for example, when you think about the grid as an example of what they've been able to transform or how they've been able to transform the city, that's a strategy that took over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I think that in your position right now and how you're formulating your new team, I think it would be important for us to think about both short-term and long-term strategy for not only the next 90 days, the next 4 years and beyond. I think the other part too behind this is that these organizations that are doing the groundwork have been really coordinated to be this point. And that's another lesson that we can learn from other cities that we can bring here as well.
So Eddie, to the last point that you made, I'm curious about your thoughts about how we can bridge the divide between the community-based organizations that are doing the work of you and others, partners across the city, bridge that divide with the police department, because as you know, unfortunately, not every commander, not every line officer understands or recognizes the value of the work that you all are doing day in and day out in the community. And it seems to me that particularly in those areas that are most violent, that if we don't have a unified strategy that recognizes the value of community-based organizations, we're never going to be successful. And I can certainly decree it, but I learned the concept of ballistics compliance when I worked in the police department years ago. So I want to understand better and get your thoughts about ways in which we can truly bring a partnership into fruition.
I think there's some amazing examples just in this room with some of the officers, some of the sergeants that are caps, even thinking about commanders like Cato and others who've been in the 7th District, like Johnson, who's no longer there. But there's amazing leadership in the police department that we continue to really elevate them as examples. I think it's going to change the culture within law enforcement, but I also think there's a lot of organizations, great leaders in this room too, who are in the forefront of that, who are really open and transparent about how do we open this dialogue, how can we continue to, what I've heard so many of our partners and our 40+ committee members, about how do we really build authentic relationships with each other, with the interest of the community. And I think part of it, that takes time, but it also takes a will.
So a couple of comments. We are planning to develop a Mayor's Office of Public Safety that includes most, if not all, of the elements that you've outlined. We've got to do a better job supporting victims and witnesses. We have to have a real strategy for returning citizens. Absolutely, we have to be much more proactive in addressing gun violence. But the point of coordination of city resources around everyone focused on the mission critical objective of keeping our community safe. We've started that with a plan that we've been working on over these last couple of weeks for summer violence kicking off for Memorial Weekend. But we will continue to drive that kind of change and coordination because I think it's critically important. The other thing, and I hope we will be in a position soon to announce the person that's going to lead that effort for us in the city, but I look forward to working with you all in partnership. The last thing I will say is we will be bringing all the commanders in early next week who are responsible for jurisdictions where the violence is most bleak and most distressing. I asked the question about ways in which we can better form authentic partnerships because my directive to them will be it's mission critical, it's not optional, you must do it. Thank you.
Our committee worked on different topics by grouping ourselves with other youth leaders with similar passion. I specifically worked on education and more particularly around universal preschooling system for young kids in Chicago, while Najee worked on business, economic, and neighborhood development and with focus on repurpose of unused city buildings. Our discussions highlighted different issues in different neighborhoods and their impact upon the lives of people. I also got to see similarities and differences in how each of us view the city. Our discussions delved deep into the huge disparities across neighborhoods, the constant investment and growth of the North, and the stagnant stance of the South. This brought ire in our voices when we got into the crux of the matter. This guided us to create recommendations that aim to make a Chicago a city that takes ownership over successes and failures in each of its neighborhoods.
We envision a Chicago in which the neighborhood you grow up in does not predict your future. We envision a Chicago where every resident has equal opportunity and agency to take advantage of all the great services the city has to offer. We envision a Chicago where communities aren't priced out or neglected. Our committee has produced some ideas we strongly believe will support our vision of a better Chicago for all of its residents, especially you. These ideas include universal pre-K, the repurposing of city buildings, affordable housing, and connected learning spaces, among others. The conversations we held were just the first steps of transforming a city that everyone feels ownership over. We must and will hold ourselves and the city accountable for following through on our shared vision. Thank you.
want to make sure that we are doing things that make sense for you, that is responsive to your needs, but the process of engagement is the thing that we continually struggle with. The way we structured the youth committee was that it was conceived of, driven by, and consisted solely of youth. My question is that the right approach, or do we need more kind of intergenerational conversations to really make sure that we're propelling the youth agenda, or some combination of the two? Any thoughts about that?
Thank you. So my answer is both, just because youth do need their own individual voice. However, we do need to have more intergenerational conversation, just because diversity goes beyond race and everything else. Age is a different form of that as well, and I feel like youth are the spearheads to the movement. We are up next, and we should have a voice in what should be done for our future. This is our future, and our future should be determined by us, and not by people just sitting up and thinking what they think is best for us instead of asking us what's best for us.
Adding to what Jay said, Chicago is constantly moving forward in youth empowerment, and there are numerous organizations across the city that are constantly working on empowering youth. And so I think, as answering your question, how we can empower more youth, I think we could partner with more organizations like Make the Challenge and other organizations to involve youth in deeper matters like policy recommendations. So there's a youth participation in every aspect of the city. And also, I'd like to say, we'd like to have youth in intergenerational mix, so that not only making recommendations to adults so that they could take the step, but we are taking the step together.
Let me make two last comments. First to you all. I think you've done incredible work. I've certainly learned from interacting with you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. And I hope that this experience has ignited even more passion in you to be civically engaged. It's critically important that you not only educate yourself, you raise your voices, but you work towards the kind of solutions that are going to be necessary to make and transform our city. So I hope this experience has really ignited that fire in you. The last thing I will say is, and it's more to the adults in the room, we talk a lot about a range of issues. We argue, we debate, but one thing that I hope we never ever forget is how remarkable our young people are in this city. Experience for you, I know it has been for me. I really appreciate the amount of time and energy that so many of you have devoted not only to this transition effort, but making sure that we are including as many diverse voices on issues of importance in this incredible conversation that we've had over this sprint for the last 6 weeks. The one thing that I wanted to make sure happened, and I believe it has, is that we didn't just craft a book that we put on a shelf and that was the end of it. This is the start of a conversation, a start of an important conversation that I look forward to continuing over the course of the next 4 years. It's incredibly important to me as a mayor that I'm not in a bubble, that I only hear from a select few people, but that we are active and engaged, and I'm going to encourage everyone who works for me to make sure they get out of their offices, they go out into the community, and they engage with the incredibly great, talented people, not only in this room, but across the great breadth and depth of our city, and especially our young people. So I have some prepared remarks. I don't know if I can mess them up or not, but I just want to say that I am grateful for the time and energy that you all have put into this effort. We are on the verge of something remarkable. My lovely wife and friends have been reminding me that I need to embrace and enjoy this moment. I'm a doer, I'm a worker bee, but I am really, really grateful and honored for everything that you've done, not just in this effort, but every single day to contribute to the richness and greatness of the city. We really are in an important, special moment, and we can't lose sight of that.
We are going to transform our city in remarkable ways. And as I look across this room, I see people who every single day give their heart and soul and passion to things that you care about. You'll hear me say a little bit of this on Monday, but not one person